So Robert Monroe and his team of explorers remote viewed the creation of humans, and this information will blow your mind. In a nutshell, what they found is that Earth is a garden, the sun is a grow lamp, and everything you see on Earth, including humans, are seedlings. But who planted the seeds? Oh, is that not the biggest question of human history? And I'm going to give you an answer according to them, and it is unsettling. So I'm going to preface this by saying, if you're super religious, have strong beliefs, this is unsettling information. Even while the explorer was in a trance state, as they do in their out-of-body research, he was even reporting back that this was unnerving him. And I trust this information because I've been to the Monroe Institute. I understand their high level of research. And when you're listening to this archive tape, and it's Robert Monroe that's monitoring it, and you're listening to it, you can't help but believe it. It rings so true. I mean, it was giving me chills and goosebumps the whole time. I listened to it multiple times and documented it. So I'm just going to give you the highlights here. But they went back 1 million years predating dinosaurs, before humans, obviously, and there was like these 4-foot tall kind of hominid beings. And they were placed specifically by the gardeners. They were placed on the shores around Earth, right? Okay, why were they placed on the shores? So they were placed on the shores. They were terrified to go into the jungles, and they couldn't swim and go in the water and stuff. So they just were lining the shorelines around Earth. Well, there was also these sea-based creatures that were sort of invading land, coming onto land. And the beings, the hominids, what I'm guessing are like early humans, had to defend the land. They had to defend themselves against these invading sea creatures, right? It was kind of like this Hunger Games. It was like they did a specific battle between land-based and water-based creatures. And these hominids started learning how to network and communicate, and they learned language and tools and weapons and all this kind of stuff to defend themselves. And this is what led to the evolution of mankind and our tribalism and civilization and kind of warrior mentality and that kind of stuff. This was by design by the gardeners. And I'll tell you who the gardeners are in just a second. It's crazy. But that's wild, right? Okay, so that's early. And then they kind of fast forward through, dinosaurs and all this stuff, because we're talking about billions of years here. And then, so the sun, this is so wild. So he found out the sun, he called it a grow light. He didn't know it was the sun when he's doing all this. He said this was the garden and that was the grow lamp. And it back then was just black and white, pulsating light, black and white. And then it evolved because it was this conscious ectoplasm. It still is. And over time, it started pulsing faster, started getting more colorful, started getting like yellow and orange hues and stuff. And now it kind of is the sun that we see now. And as the sun evolved, so did life on Earth. Like trees. Way back then, he said trees didn't look like this. During the dinosaur ages and before that, it was fungus. It was all fungi, right? And then it turned into trees as the sun evolved. But as the sun evolved, the 4-foot tall little hominid things that were covered in hair and everything also evolved. They started looking more human-like. Then they started developing this right and left brain, because before they just had one brain that was basically its job was just survival. That was it. Then we created this right and left brain where we kind of had two beings in one, and we started analytically thinking, we started becoming self-aware and sentient and conscious, and then that's what was kind of the birth of creativity and curiosity in the modern day human, right? It happened because the sun was evolving. We evolve as the sun evolves, and as Earth evolves. It's this system between the garden, the grow light, and the seeds. So wild. So, I don't want to just make this video go on forever. I could with all this information, but I'll just hit the main points. Let's talk about who the gardeners are. So who planted these seeds? This is where it gets really unnerving, because what he found out was that there was a spaceship. He called it a laboratory, but it was above Earth, floating above Earth. In this laboratory, there was beings that their job, and he described them as super tall, super skinny, long fingers. He says like spider-like, super long, skinny fingers. And but they looked kind of human, but they were genderless. They didn't have any clothes or anything, and that they were the ones responsible for creating the seeds. So on this laboratory spaceship above Earth, all they did was create seeds and then plant the seeds. But he said the really unnerving part was that they didn't have any follow-up. They would plant the seeds, so they would create the seeds, all the different seeds. We're talking about all the different plants, animals, fish, humans, everything. They create all that. Then they plant them on Earth, and then they move on and do it elsewhere in the universe. That's what their job is. That's their role. Now that's it. They don't come back and tend the garden. They just create and plant the seeds. That's where we came from. We evolved, as Earth evolved and as the sun evolved, and as this early hominid race evolved, we evolved into humans, according to this information. But these beings that planted us, they also created everything else. They're the gardeners, right? And you hear like Dolores Cannon and all these people talk about the keepers of the garden and the custodians of Earth and stuff. That's these beings. But then what he said is that they don't have any follow-up role. They go on their merry way and leave you to your own devices. They create this garden, which is conducive with the conscious sun to creating this evolutionary environment where everything on Earth evolves. So we're just here to evolve, to fight, to learn, to grow, to evolve, and all that kind of stuff. But this is where it gets super interesting, because these beings in this laboratory spaceship, they go all around the universe and do this to all the planets, right? That's what all of these extraterrestrials that we see are. They're just different life forms that were seeded on different planets at different times, that have had different evolutionary timelines, and now they're just kind of at their different levels. I mean, you got to think there's planets out there that probably started this whole process millions or billions of years before us, and that basically the universe is just teeming with life, that all the planets you see out there and moons and everything are just little gardens for this laboratory. I'm assuming there's multiple laboratories traveling around the universe, planting seeds, creating, hybridizing, mixing and matching, and just planting seeds, and then just letting everything grow. And then I'm sure going and checking up on it, I would assume, but they didn't have that information. But man, how crazy is that? And I mean, like I said, I trust this information, because when I'm listening to it, I mean, I was just getting goosebumps. It actually made my stomach kind of hurt a little bit, because I was like, it was confirming so many things that I had learned on my journey. So many things that I learned from different sources. To hear it come from Robert Monroe, to hear it come from this actual archive tape of them doing a remote viewing session to our creation, and just the genuineness of this Explorer series and everything, I was like, dude, is this our creation story? This is a garden. And to hear him even say that the sun, whenever he went to investigate the sun, it was this, he called it ectoplasmic conscious, basically energy. He said it was the energy source for the garden, and he called it the grow light. And I never thought about the sun like that, but it's the grow light, and this is the garden. And we're just a seed that was created, and we have grown and evolved in this garden. How wild is that? And there's probably millions or billions of these gardens around the universe, created by the same beings, right? And that's probably why there's this common blueprint for intelligent species. They seem to be upright, hominid, 2 arms, 2 legs, bipedal kind of beings, because it seems like these gardeners that are creating these seeds, they probably have a blueprint that works. They probably mix and matched and tried all sorts of things, and they're learning as they go, and they're probably okay, this model seems to work, right? The human type model. And that's why a lot of the extraterrestrials we see are kind of human-like, right? Even though they're probably from different distant planets and worlds, because this just kind of seems to work. I don't know. Oh, it's just wild, man. But they even went into depth about the gardeners, the people on the ship, tall, alien looking, long fingers. I mean, people talk about this stuff. And the ship, round, laboratory-like, there's been all sorts of people that have reported being on these same types of ships, where they're actually hybridizing and making things and stuff. And Dolores Cannon did all sorts of past life regressions and stuff, talking about the keepers of the garden and the gardeners and the custodians, and talked about this exact same kind of stuff. It's just crazy, It really makes you think. I think this is our Genesis story, It might not be sexy and glamorous or whatever, but it makes sense. This is a garden. That is the grow light. And we're just seedlings that grew and have been evolving. Fucking nuts, guys. Let me know. What do you guys think of all that? Have a beautiful day.